Good day. In this video, I'd like to share with you 3 examples of how conversations and expectations evolved in job interviews. Okay, and the first example would be the trend towards smarter conversations. Right, so the most basic example here would be your tell me about yourself. Because not long ago, the expectation from your tell me about yourself would be to present your main experiences, even from your CV, and maybe with some highlights on what makes you a good fit for the job, right? Whereas the best way to pitch your tell me about yourself would be primarily with the highlights, only the highlights that matter the most when it comes to the role that you're applying for, right? To sell yourself, so to speak, what's in for them, right? A bit more commercialism and stuff like that, right? So it's not as if people would not know that they must sell themselves in the tell me about yourself. But when I hear people presenting their elevator speeches, I am surprised about how few are able to sell themselves well with only the most relevant information when compared to presenting all the information with some highlights, right? So this is also in part to AI, because when you have so easy access to examples that are perfectly good, perfectly plausible to present in a job interview, it's a lot easier for you to understand what makes a great answer. And therefore, if everyone has easy access to this high quality type of information, then it's going to be a lot, the bar will be raised for everyone else. And what you might expect would be a decent tell me about yourself would no longer fly these days. Okay. The second example I'd like to share with you is with respect to shorter conversations. So basically what I observed for the period of 1 year would be that interviews are trending to be shorter, specifically toward the 30 minutes mark. And this, is in contrast 5 years ago when the norm was 1 hour interviews. Okay? And I believe a core reason to this is around the AI productivity boom, so to speak, because for example, on the candidate side, it's assumed that, hey, if you use AI, if you use new technologies, it will be a lot easier, a lot faster for you to prepare those job interviews. On the employer side, on the interviewer side, the productivity boom will make it easier for employers to determine what makes a great candidate for the job. And when you have both sides, with productivity booms on each side, it would be a lot more straightforward to understand of how good of a fit a candidate is during a 30-minute conversation. Now, not all interviews are 30 minutes, but even if they say it's 45 minutes, probably the last 15 minutes will be questions for them. So what I would like to highlight here is that even though interviews might be getting on the shorter side, my advice for you would be to still try to give convincing long first answers, And by first answer, I don't mean your elevator pitch, but rather the first answer should be the most complete and convincing possible answer. Because what happens here is that some candidates assume that if the time is super limited, they would have to hurry up and answer questions as a trivia game. When in fact, it's a lot more than that. They are not expecting for a generic type of answer, but they are expecting for a proper STAR answer with as many specific details as possible, right? And if you think this is easy, you might have heard about the STAR worksheet, right? It's pretty common for people to tell me, hey, I know about this. But when I ask them, hey, but did you use some challenging follow-up questions to tailor your stories, to improve your stories? A lot fewer people say this. So long story short, even though the conversations are shorter, I would still encourage you to have long, convincing first answers. Okay, and the third example I'd like to share with you is with respect to deeper conversations. Okay, so you see, a direct impact of AI is that many people are using AI to brainstorm for stories and even reward their stories using AI, which, by the way, never works in my experience. But I know that it's not as easy as that. So basically, my point here is that if in the past it was exceptional for an employer to call an interview a deep dive right? There was, the deep dive test in job interviews, which was pretty common, but nowadays interviewers even have interviews labeled as deep dives. And basically the core reason why someone would do a deep dive with you would be to screen, are you who you say you are? Can you do the job that you're supposed to? And this would basically show by your ability to dive deep, uncomfortably deep, sometimes into details of some of your experiences, just in order for the interviewer to understand your skill set, your ability for the job, right? So basically, there is this trend toward deep dives and deeper conversations, also in a bit to check if you are who you say you are, but also because people who prepare job interviews, people who do brain dumps of even several pages of their experiences, which might have happened a while back, can remember all the key details when compared to others who have only a surface level understanding of the role. They will not be able to dive uncomfortably deep, or they would have omitted some details. They cannot remember some metrics or some decision-making chain in that specific story that they're telling. So also, when I've the other day I've tested an AI service which was basically recording sound, and based on the questions they would hear from an interviewer, they would give an answer. They would give you an answer that you could read from your computer screen during presumably the actual interview. So when you do a deep dive with someone, chances are that AI will start to hallucinate. Okay, so it will no longer work for this type of interview cheating, which in my opinion is the worst possible thing you could ever do. But long story short, conversations are evolving, and yes, there is an impact of AI into all this, and I thought you should be aware of this as well. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.